This is the all-new Hyundai Ioniq 5, an electric car that could have all the key ingredients to make an enormous impact on the EV market. In this video, we're showing you inside, taking it for a drive, and telling you everything you need to know. But first, don't forget that whatcar.com can get you a great saving on your next new car. Click on the link, look in our description, or just search for What Car Deals to find out more. And subscribe to our channel for lots of other new car reviews. Okay, first, let's take a look around the Ioniq 5. Now, when we first saw the pictures of this car, it looked really cool, really sleek, but it gave the impression that it was a really compact, small kind of thing. But in the metal, this is actually a pretty big car. So in Hyundai's lineup, it sits between the Tucson and the Santa Fe in terms of length, but it's actually closer to the ground than both of those cars. So for some EV context, it's bigger than the Kia e-Niro, it's bigger than the Kona Electric. It's also even a little bit bigger than the VW ID4. And in fact, the proportions are actually pretty similar to the Tesla Model Y. The distance between the front and rear wheels, by the way, is 3,000 millimeters, which is about the same as an Audi A8 and bodes well for the amount of space on offer inside. But it's the styling rather than the size that will likely catch your eye. Based on the 45 concept, which itself was based on the 1974 Pony Coupe concept, the production version has kept quite a distinctive look. There's some really cool features on the car, like Hyundai's first clamshell bonnet, which gives it this really clean look on the front. And also these lights down here just look really cool, don't they? They've got this kind of pixel style to them, and you get full LEDs as standard. So every Ioniq 5 is going to look like this. There also isn't a traditional grille. So instead you've got the housing for various sensors at the front, as well as this V-shaped bumper. And down here, these are active air intakes. There's flush door handles too, which pop out when you approach the car. And for sleekness at the back, there's no rear windscreen wiper. There's a total of 9 exterior colours to choose from, including 5 new ones for the Hyundai brand. It's also got quite eye-catching 20-inch alloys. So does this design feast all add up to be the best looking electric car on sale? Let us know what you think in the comments below. There is a really futuristic look inside the Ioniq 5 with these two 12.5-inch screens that are joined together on the dashboard, kind of like we've seen in Mercedes products. And you've got one screen for the digital driver display and one screen for the infotainment. But there aren't that many physical buttons to control the infotainment system. So it means that while you're driving, it is going to be more distracting to use than other systems that give you a rotary dial or more physical controls to operate it. But there are some physical shortcut buttons down here, and you can see you've got this new panel that has the climate control function here as well. The bad news is that these aren't physical buttons, they're touch sensitive instead, which means that it can be quite difficult to accurately press them while you're driving, but at least they're always visible and clearly labelled. The infotainment system itself is decent. It's got a responsive touchscreen and it has a similar kind of look and feel to other new Hyundai models with this infotainment system. There's also said to be an augmented reality display which can project information like directions from the sat-nav onto the windscreen. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard, with wireless phone charging and an upgraded Bose stereo system likely to appear on the options list. And if you're wondering about the other tech available with the Ioniq 5, it will get adaptive cruise control with steering and lane change assistance, as well as a self-parking system. Aside from the tech, what else do you need to know about the Ioniq 5 interior? Well, there is a lot of adjustment in here. So yes, you can move the steering wheel in and out. You've also got loads of adjustment in even this center console down here. So you can slide it backwards and forwards depending on where you want this armrest and the cup holders. And on top of all that, you can fold these front seats basically entirely flat. And you can also fold out the front to make it an actual armchair as well. So obviously I'm sat very awkwardly now, but if I was to relax fully while this is on charge, then this is a pretty decent thing to have in the car. Anyway, what about the quality inside the Ioniq 5? Well, the look is certainly really cool, sleek, minimalist, futuristic as well. I like this 2-spoke steering wheel, but the materials that are used aren't the very best in the electric car world. So this on the steering wheel feels kind of plasticky, and the plastics used here as well, they are a little bit squidgy, but again, slight flimsy feel to these shortcut buttons too. And also this plastic here is relatively cheap and not particularly plush feeling. So the look of the thing is really, really cool. It's just some materials here and there that don't mean that this is a completely standout, knockout, wow interior, but it's still very good. Now, you can't turn these into armchairs in the same way that you can turn the front seats, but you can still slide these rear seats forwards and backwards, and they split fold 60-40 if you do want to put them down and make even more space in the boot. And you can see back here, there is a really impressive amount of room for passengers. So the driver's seat is in my driving position. I'm just under 6 foot, sat behind it, and I've got absolutely loads of leg room. I can really stretch out and relax, no problem at all there. Headroom is also very good indeed, although this might be where the taller rivals that this car's up against have a slight advantage on headroom. But still, I can sit up straight and I don't feel cramped. It's just if I was especially tall, maybe some of the other proper out and out taller electric SUVs that this car's up against might just offer a little more headroom, but it's certainly not a problem for the Ioniq 5. Feels very open, spacious. These windows are nice and big as well. And I also like that you've got this kind of helpful thin pocket, which is actually a perfect size to just keep your phone. So all in all, really impressive back here. The boot's impressive too. At 540 litres, it's a bit smaller than the Skoda Enyaq, a very similar size to the ID4, and much bigger than the Mustang Mach-E. It gets a tiny amount of extra storage under the bonnet too. But if you go for a rear-wheel drive Ioniq 5 rather than this four-wheel drive version, then this front storage space is actually more than twice the size. So it all adds up to a very practical package. But what's the Ioniq 5 like to drive? Well, it is quick. We are in the most powerful version of the Ioniq 5. You can get with a 73 kilowatt hour battery and 2 electric motors, one that drives the front wheels, one that drives the rear wheels, making it all-wheel drive with 302 brake horsepower and a 0 to 62 miles per hour time of 5.2 seconds, which is rapid, and it really feels it. It's way quicker than a VW ID4, quicker than a Mustang Mach-E, and actually quite similar to the acceleration on offer from the entry-level version of the Tesla Model 3. There are slower versions of the Ioniq 5, of course. In its most basic form, it gets a 58 kilowatt-hour battery pack with a single electric motor driving the rear wheels, delivering 168 brake horsepower. It's not been officially announced, but that car will likely have a range of around 250 miles, which is decent if not amazing. And it'll cover 0 to 62 miles per hour in 8.5 seconds. You can also go for a 73 kilowatt hour battery with a more powerful 215 brake horsepower electric motor, and this version increases the range up to 300 miles. Hyundai says the range topper we're in has a range of about 270 to 290 miles. So it can travel pretty far too, and okay, it might not have the headline grabbing figure of a 380 mile range like the Ford Mustang Mach-E has, but there are plenty of other areas where the Ioniq 5 stands out. For example, you're going to be able to get the car with the option of adding a solar roof, so it can charge the car on the move. And Hyundai says that in somewhere like southern Spain or Italy, it will add up to 1,200 miles of extra range to the car over the course of a year. But we're yet to see the calculations behind that, and in somewhere like the UK, it's probably going to be slightly less effective. With a specific adapter, the external recharging plug can be used as a power source, so you could actually, in theory, plug in and charge another electric car. It just might take a while. But where the Ioniq 5 could really shake up the EV market is with its charging speeds. Yes, where the ID4 can be charged at a rate of up to 125 kilowatts and the Mustang Mach-E up to 150 kilowatts with their 400 volt battery technology, the Ioniq 5 with 800 volt battery technology will support charging of up to 220 kilowatts. This means at its fastest charging speed, which we'll get from a 350 kilowatt charger, it will get a 10 to 80% charge in just 18 minutes. That's half the time it will take for an ID4 to get the same. Which is great, but the bad news is that finding chargers capable of those charging speeds isn't exactly easy in the UK. Right now there are just 15 locations where you can get a 350 kilowatt charger, but there will be more in the future. That's partly why the Tesla Model Y, whenever it arrives in the UK, will still have the edge here. It can charge up to 250 kilowatts and has the major advantage of getting access to Tesla's widely available and well-maintained supercharger network. But anyway, what's this car actually like to drive? Well, the first thing to say is that this exact Ioniq 5 that I'm in right now is technically a pre-production model. So Hyundai's explained that there are various caveats that go along with driving this. So for example, the refinement of the car, the steering, the ride, those are quite crucial areas that haven't actually been properly signed off on this car. So what you experience in the production-ready version of the Ioniq 5 is said to be slightly different from what we're experiencing in this car. So with those excuses out of the way, what is it like to drive? What we can say is that if you'd hope that it's only going to get better from here, then this is a very, very good starting point indeed. So the steering, it's really smooth, it's light, so it's super easy to move this at low speeds, no problem at all. Doesn't feel like a massive heavy car in any way. And at faster speeds, it actually weights up how you'd want it to. It feels slightly numb around center, but it's as accurate as you'd want and hope it to be. But the handling ultimately is a bit more engaging and enjoyable than it is in a VW ID4. The ride, it does feel a little thumpy at low speeds, but then when you get a bit of pace into the car, it does develop this kind of nice wafty nature, so you're kind of gently moving up and down over the road. But the thing with that is, it doesn't feel especially controlled. But again, that's something that could very well change with the fully production-ready version of the Ioniq 5. But just on really undulating back roads that we've been on today, there's perhaps a little bit more movement in the car than you'd ideally want. It also means that when you're cornering fast, there's a bit more body lean as well. But it is really quick. So you've got a few different drive modes as well. And as with every electric car, each drive mode really dramatically changes the impact of the accelerator pedal. So normal mode, it's fairly normal, surprisingly enough. Into eco, everything kind of numbs itself and it just becomes all about conserving range. But then in sport, it's incredibly lively. It's also got a snow mode that if you hold down the drive mode button, you can put it in. You can also control the regenerative braking using the paddles on the steering wheel here. But what you can also do is you can turn on what Hyundai calls I-pedal. So other manufacturers would call this one pedal driving, which is where when you lift off the accelerator, the car will slow itself down to a complete stop. So when you've got it in I-pedal mode, that's what happens in the Ioniq 5. And just with every other car that has a one pedal function, it's really useful to have, especially in stop-start traffic in town, because it just means that you hardly ever have to touch the brake pedal. The brake pedal itself in the Ioniq 5 is pretty good. The initial bite of the pedal is responsive and not in a grabby way, but then as you get further down into the pedal, it loses that kind of sensitivity and responsiveness. But it's still relatively easy to make smooth stops in this car. And the refinement, well, there are a few rattles and squeaks going on in the interior that won't be in the production version of the Ioniq 5, you'd hope. But generally, it still doesn't feel especially loud in here at all. You've still got that kind of calming electric vibe going on inside. So again, a promising starting point for the car, certainly. One thing that won't change from this pre-production version to the production-ready Ioniq 5 is the driving position, and it is very good in the Ioniq 5. You've got this commanding sitting position with a really good view out ahead, really good view out the back as well, door mirrors are good sizes, and you've got all that without it actually feeling like you're driving a big, massive SUV. So you do feel like you're kind of perched up here, looking out and down onto everything, but you at the same time don't feel like you're in a really high-riding off-roader. It doesn't feel particularly sporty, but it does give you a very good view. The problem with the driving position, this digital driver display. So I've got the steering wheel where I want it, the seat where I want it, and the top of the wheel here is just cutting off some of the things on the display there. So that is a bit annoying, bit of a shame, because actually in this view that I've got it on now, it's cutting off the speed that I'm going, which isn't a very good idea. But you can shift it around, change the display a little bit, and you've also got a really helpful big footrest for your left foot as well. These chrome effect indicator things actually feel pretty good quality, even though they're just plastic. And this gear selector is new for Hyundai as well, down here. So, nice inside, practical, decent to drive, this is a very promising first taste of the Ioniq 5. Full UK pricing and specs are yet to be announced, but the first Ioniq 5 we'll see is likely to be a special edition model called Project 45, which, at around £45,000, is too deep into Tesla Model 3 territory to be wholly recommendable. But with the range expected to start around £36,000, VW, Skoda, Ford, and anyone else making an EV in this price bracket certainly has a fight on their hands. Thank you very much for watching this review, and if you want to make sure that you see our extended review of the full production-ready Ioniq 5, then make sure you're subscribed to our channel. And don't forget, if you want to buy a new car, go to whatcar.com to get a great deal.